Welcome to The Scoop, NANP's monthly educational webinar series. I am your host, Andrea Granson, Education Program Specialist for the NANP. These webinars are recorded and can be reviewed at any time by logging into the NANP members area. Okay, so let's get started. Today we present Biochemical Individualism for Nutrition Clinicians with Amy Rawls. Amy Rawls has practiced in the Beaumont and Houston area since 2010, when she completed her master's degree with a dietetic residency through Lamar University. Amy has gone on to earn additional certifications as a functional medicine nutritionist and certified gastrointestinal nutritionist. Amy has more than 10 years of experience in applying functional nutrition practices to an array of metabolic clinical states. She is currently Director of Clinical Services for Transformation Enzyme Corporation, where she gained her certification in enzyme therapy and is responsible for all of Transformation's education and development material and programs. She also oversees Transformation's clinic and technical support services and assists with research and development. Amy has spoken at various events, seminars and conferences, both locally and internationally, on topics related to nutrition and enzyme application. Her passion for health focuses on holistic, integrative and functional medical nutrition therapy. She has a personal mission to create awareness that even healthy food can be poison if not digested properly. Welcome, Amy. Thank you for joining us today. It's now over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for joining me on my talk on how to improve your client outcomes using enzyme therapy and biochemical individualism. This is an introduction to Transformation Enzyme's body type program that we have kind of patented to be our own. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm fighting a cold, so I sound a little nasally, so sorry about that. So biochemical individuality. Let's talk about the history, science, and nutrition aspects of it. Biochemical individuality is the concept that the nutritional and chemical makeup of each person is unique and that dietary and other needs therefore vary from person to person. The belief that people have unique biochemical profiles based upon their own genetic structure, nutrition, and environment is nothing new. It's something you've all probably heard of. It's been around, literally for thousands of years. You are probably most familiar with the American version of body types, which is the apple, pear, or banana shape, or the triangle, inverted triangle, or rectangle. That's actually what I learned about in school. There's also in Indian culture, the Ayurvedic medicine, which originated 5,000 years ago, where they're completely based on doshas, or the way that we are driven to different taste, whether we're a salty lover, sour, or sweet. And they identify those with types like vata, pitta, and kapha. Not exactly the same, but a lot of similarities. The problem is not everyone fits these three medical types, known as ectomorph, which is your light build or small joints, your endomorphs, which are solid and soft people, or your mesomorph, which is those that have large muscles and that athletic physique. Nor do they fit the three ancient types, vata, pitta, and kapha. Because of this, it led to the development of a mixed type. In 1956, a professor and researcher at UT coined the phrase and concept of biochemical individuality. He actually wrote a book called The Key to Understanding What Shaped Your Health. So, where does Transformation's biochemical individualism program come in and how is it different? Well, Dr. Fuller, our founder, made her footprint in body typing by taking the findings a step further and focusing on the digestive component and what digestive enzymes are the individual is lacking that is dictating some of the health concerns that we're seeing in our patients. Dr. Fuller and we at Transformation believe that one of the major reasons why any body type suffers weaknesses and gets out of balance is due to an enzyme deficiency. These imbalances are inherited and compounded through poor eating habits and stress on the system. So how are we different? Where does Transformation's biochemical individualism program come in and how is it different than stuff you've heard of? So again, Dr. Fuller, which is our founder, made her footprint in body typing by taking those findings a step further and addressing digestive capability in people. Dr. Fuller is her background. She has many titles, but one of them was a colon hydrotherapist. And one of the cool things about how she figured out where people's digestive weaknesses was in her colon hydrotherapy sessions. She would do a session on people. So a lot of this was done through observation, but we do have some objective things that we started to use that are more validating. But anyway, during her colon hydrotherapy sessions, she would see certain individuals that they were built a certain way. They had certain health conditions, all the same. She would see the same foods not being digested in their stool. She would see the same things in their colon hydrotherapy sessions. And that's where she was really able to narrow down, this person is having trouble digesting this specific type of food. So we have to remember we are all born with different size organs, different genes, and different propensities to digest food based on factors that took place in the 9th to 10th week of gestation. Many people don't know that your propensity to digest is actually determined that early. We can't continue to assume that we all have the same pancreatic output and function when it comes to our ability to digest. And this is where body typing can be really, really influential. So before I get into the weeds of what body typing is, I want to cover a quick reminder to everyone listening. You may have heard the saying before, you are what you eat. Well, I'm here to tell you that is incorrect. You are not what you eat. You're what you digest, assimilate, and fail to eliminate. So the image you see here is what we refer to as the ripple effect of digestion and disease. The outmost circle represents the presented illness, and the inner circle represents where the disease began or where the problem began, which is the digestive system. That is because poor digestion will result in disease, period. That is because poorly digested carbohydrates ferment in your colon. What this does is it provides food for harmful microorganisms, which results in increased gases that overwhelm the system and contribute to more toxicity and inflammation. Poorly digested fats turn rancid in the large intestine and are absorbed into the bloodstream where they are oxidized and can become free radicals. So here we are as nutritionists telling people, eat your omega-3s, eat your omega-9s, get your cruciferous veggies, when if we're not making sure that our clients are digesting appropriately. And yes, there's definitely chewing, being a parasympathetic state. We definitely do those natural things. And you can recommend apple cider vinegar and things like that. But an enzyme is what you need to digest. And as you age, your propensity to make your own digestive enzymes decline. So this is where support is really important. So anyway, whenever we're telling people to eat these foods, if we're not addressing their ability to digest, we're creating just as much toxicity and inflammation. Poor proteins that aren't digested, they actually putrefy, and that creates more toxicity. Microorganisms consume this and elicit more toxins. So remember this when I get to the foundation part of the presentation today of where the supplements come in. And the reason why, no matter what the condition, any protocol that we use and any protocol that I use as a dietitian in my own clinic is always going to include a digestive, a proteolytic, and a probiotic to address this ripple effect here, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So hopefully I've grabbed your attention and you're now wondering, okay, so we know the importance of digestion. What's my body type? So let's dive in. Have you ever noticed how people appear to be one of 4 basic shapes? So maybe it's the woman who seems to carry all her weight in her tummy and her upper torso, but has a really lean lower half. I like to use Tina Turner in this example. She has fabulous legs, but if you notice, Tina's always wearing really loose stuff up top, and that's because she carries a lot of her weight up here. Or that teller at the bank who appears to be very small and petite, and when she gets up to walk away, you notice that she's much wider and larger than you thought she was. She's carrying a lot of her weight in the lower half, where the upper half is very small. These are the women or men even that usually they can't really wear pantsuits because they need 2 different sizes. Or those old men that just can't seem to keep their pants up without the help of suspenders. And you may be wondering, what does this have to do with nutrition in our talk today? And the answer is everything. And that is because different body shapes come with different nutrition needs and different enzyme needs. The key word here is different, which means, unfortunately, no one diet will work for everyone. And I know you guys are, sorry, my foot slipped. I know you guys already know that, but this is a tool that you can use to really help narrow that down and give your practice a more individualized approach and really make it easier to figure out, well, I know keto doesn't work for everybody, right? But maybe if I knew their body type, I would know which diet they would do better with. So body typing is extremely important for nutrition professionals because our body types determine which foods create digestive difficulties. Not everyone needs to be, like I said, on keto, and not everyone needs to be vegan. You'll soon find out which body types do best on many of the fad diets that we know and hear about today. So let's start with how we do it. How do we look at it? How do we body type? The main way we start is with a questionnaire. The questionnaire focuses on 4 things. It looks at food preferences, health issues, personality traits, and the shape and bone structure of the person. We start with food preferences, things that people are drawn to, but may not feel too well when they consume them. When we devote a lifetime to eating foods that are not best choices for our bodies, we manifest certain health issues. And many times these concerns are unique to the specific body types. Dr. Fuller was able to identify personality similarities in each of the body types during her years of practice. And we use those findings today to determine what someone is. And lastly, we look at a person's shape, how they carry their weight, and where their bone structure is. So we measure clavicle to hip bone distance to determine actually what body type that person is. And I want to make sure everyone understands that these are not medical diagnoses. It is just an observational tool that helps communicate nutrition and health to your clients in a more efficient way. So once we determine a person's body type, we then begin to support the proper changes to better their health. First, we start with diet and food choices. So diet and food choices for each type are lined out in detail in the booklets that we provide, which I'll get to. That's more about the program, which I'll cover at the end of the presentation. So we go over the diet part, and then the second is the enzyme protocol. And that's really the unique thing about what I'm talking about today is the enzyme specifications for each body type, because just like we have different nutrition needs, we all have different enzyme needs. And again, the protocols for that are going to be discussed later on. And then we always, for anything we do, because we are if you notice her saying, we are a nutrition and enzyme company. Yes, we believe in supplementation, but we believe in lifestyle more. So, even as great as our enzymes are, you can't out supplement poor diet. You can't out supplement too much stress, poor lifestyle things. So you have to address those things as well. So the 4 types. So when it comes to body typing, there are 4 body types. The first one is a para. So now everybody start listening because we're going to be identifying what the types are. Para is your type 1, and it's known for the controlling gland being the parathyroid or thyroid gland. So para for parathyroid. The next group is your estro or testro, otherwise known as a type 2. And this group is controlled by the gonadal or hormonal glands. I couldn't say that word. The next is your supra or type 3. And this stands for suprarenal or adrenal glands. And the last one is your type 4, which gets its name from the neurological and endocrine systems. These glands control the hormone production of the other glands and indirectly affect the nervous system. So the types are really all linked back to the endocrine system and how they're affected. So let's start with type 1, a para. For a para, a meal is not complete for you without some type of carbohydrate, whether it is a sweet, a bread, or rice. The para group gravitates towards being a vegetarian, and they typically think it is healthier for them, but that's definitely not the case. They actually do much better with protein and on higher protein diets like paleo. The food preferences, again, are carbs. So they crave sugar in the form of desserts, breads, pastas, fruit, vegetables. They're drawn to chocolate because they do enjoy that mixture of fat and sugar, but they typically will pick something sweet over a real food and almost always need something sweet once they finish a meal. Their enzyme deficiency, obviously, we want what we lack. So they crave carbs, therefore they lack polysaccharidic enzymes. So those are the different enzymes you need to break down sugar in fruit, fiber, starch, etc. So they're lacking those polysaccharidic ones. Again, you need amylase for starch, cellulose for fiber, invertase for table sugar, lactase for milk, macerase and pectinase to break down pectins commonly found in fruits and vegetables, phytase found in grains and seeds. A lack of carbohydrate enzymes is oftentimes the result of eating too many carbohydrate foods that require these enzymes more that the body simply can't keep up to meet the need. Because remember, as we age, that propensity also declines. So why is this a problem? Well, carbohydrates and starch foods that are improperly digested cannot be used by the brain like they're supposed to be with normal metabolism. Instead, they ferment and they create every problem starting from inflammation to fatigue because we can't use that energy. And we'll talk about, the proper enzyme, but they lack polysaccharidic support. So when selecting an enzyme, a digestive enzyme for a para, you want to make sure it's one that has a lot of polysaccharidic blends in there. The main health concerns for a para are thyroid dysfunction being number one. They may not have full-blown hypo or hyperthyroid issues, but they have a lot of the symptoms. They have cold hands, they have cold feet, brain fog, thinning of the eyebrow. This type is more susceptible to thyroid problems because of a deficiency of the hormone thyroxine derived from protein, as these types tend to be drawn to other foods that do not assist the thyroid. So it's really easy to kind of narrow it. If you ask them, they typically meat's the last thing they're going to eat. They don't really like to go for it. They're more of like your salad people. They might eat healthy, but they eat a lot more veg and don't really like the protein piece. Often this group will have depression or mood swings. They are prone to skin issues, specifically eczeama, because eczema typically one of the drivers. Eczema has like 16 causes, but one of them being an inability to properly break down sugar. And again, sugar, polysaccharidic. So eczema is a big trigger for these people. Headaches because their brain can't utilize the glucose, low blood pressure related to their thyroid disorder. Because they don't generally like protein and they like a lot of carbohydrate, this group is definitely more prone to blood sugar fluctuations. They often have spouts of low energy and then highs. They have issues with hypoglycemia. Allergies can be common. On the questionnaire, one of the questions that I added to there, because it's a question I ask every single time, is, are you hungry when you wake up? That's typically how I can almost always differentiate between the types. Is a para and a neuro are typically going to eat when they wake up and the other types don't, because they need that blood sugar regulation. So paras usually are going to want to, if you're somebody that wakes up and needs to eat, there's a good chance you're a para. So how are they shaped? They tend to gain weight evenly all over. If overweight, excess fat is in the stomach and the waist area, but they usually will have it pretty well spread. Men will usually have a spare tire and women hold fat in their buttocks. So they actually, this used to be called the butt type. When Dr. Fuller started this, she would be like, well, let me look at your butt. Because paras have a high perky butt, whereas we'll talk about the other types, their bottom is shaped differently. They usually have a well-defined waist, or they'll have more of like love handles. And the width of their shoulders, their clavicle and hip bones is straight. It's in line with one another. So in the training that we actually do, we actually go over by measuring your clavicle and hip bone and how to do that properly to truly determine somebody's type. So the bone measurement is kind of the most definitive way to do it. And if they gain 10 pounds, like I said, it's hard to see if they've gained it because they gain it so evenly all over. Whereas the other types, it's more obvious. So the para personality habits, these people are usually very outgoing. They're extroverted. They can be scattered and forgetful because they can be kind of hyperactive. They're very people person, intuitive, witty. Like I said, they like to eat as soon as they wake. They enjoy eating and find it entertaining. These are the people that get hangry too. I'm a para, for example, and it's like when I say I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Like I need to eat soon. Whereas my husband, who is a supra, which we'll get to, he'll say he's hungry, and then he'll sit there and continue talking to people for like another 30 minutes. And I'm like, he doesn't have to eat right away. They can regulate their hunger better. Whereas me, when I say I'm hungry, we better get me food soon because there's not much time. So the protocol for a para and then the nutritional recommendations in general. And again, so we do offer an online training for this, and I go in much more detail, but for the purpose of today's presentation, I kept it very general and brief. So again, for balance, you want them to avoid sugar and high starch meals and include some type of complete protein at each meal. So again, like a vegan diet, not ideal for this body type. Vegetarian, not ideal. The most important meal for them is breakfast. You want to make sure that they're starting their day, which most of you are already probably doing, with some type of protein or fat there. Now, what we get into more detail in the training is, while you're like, okay, yeah, balance the plate, protein, fat, there are certain proteins that paras don't tolerate well. There are certain fats that paras don't tolerate. Each body type, even within the macro family of fat, protein, carb, there are certain foods in each category that the types don't do well with. So in the training, and even in the book that Dr. Fuller wrote on it, we go into much more detail on what foods you should stay away from, even though it's carb, and even though you're following the portion, there's certain foods even in that group that you should not do as much, and there's other ones that the body types tolerate much better. So again, making sure a para is going to try to have like oatmeal at breakfast with a banana, maybe a Nutri-Grain bar or toast. That's really not a good breakfast for anybody, but especially not for a para. So again, making sure they have that protein and fat there. Whole grains in moderation. I typically use caution for everybody with wheat and gluten. This is obviously a personal choice if there's no like definitive testing indicating that they are like gluten sensitive or anything. So that would be up to you. But most paras, because of their propensity to have eczema, usually don't do well with gluten, but it's individual. So things to remember: high protein diet, start the day with more protein than carb, and complete proteins are best. As far as the enzyme protocol, so what in the program with the training, what we provide is these script pads that give you their enzyme protocol. It's not all these products. It is typically going to start with these three here, that ripple effect I talked about, giving them a digestive support. This is a digestive that has a lot of polysaccharidic enzyme support, a protease to address inflammation and detox, and a probiotic for good microflora, depending on the situation. So, with a para, they are prone to constipation. So this is where you might want to consider a product like Enzyme. Or if you're working with a para and they are celiac as well, the Carbo G you can use instead of Digest. If you're working with a para and their main symptoms seem to be linked to thyroid, or they're having just hormonal imbalance, if it's just thyroid, you could do thyroid complex or Masterzyme if it's the entire endocrine system. And then the Balancezyme is good for those with blood sugar. So these are things that I go over a lot more in the training on when to use what. And you could always set up time to speak with me if you had questions on when to use what. But generally, you're going to start here and then just with one or two support products. But this is some of the things you would get if you were using it. I just wanted to be clear that you don't put them on all this. That would be crazy. Less is more. So, do you know a para? Next, we'll go into the type 2, or the estro-testro. Estro for women, testro for men. When you ask these people, a meal for them is not complete without some type of fat. Whether the food is fried or rich or creamy dessert, it's an ethnic food like pizza, Italian or Mexican. They love spice, they love flavor. They like a salad with blue cheese or a baked potato with butter or sour cream. Whereas the para, they want the baked potato plain or with ketchup because it's that sweetness. They don't care about the fat. They want the starch. Whereas the estro, they'll be eating the starch so they can have the fat to pair it with. So another toast is a great example. Do they butter their toast or do they put jam on it? Jam is going to be your para. Butter is going to be your estro. A para is not going to put butter on their toast, usually, unless they're a blend of the types, which is also something that can happen. Chips and salsa. Paras are going to eat the chips plain. The estros are going to want queso. They're going to want guacamole, that type of thing. So their food preferences, again, are listed here. They are attracted to wine. So paras, again, sweet, think sweet, white wines. Estros, red wines. They like that rich flavor. They like starchy, fatty flavored, salted things. They like rich, creamy desserts. They like fried things. So like onion rings, French fries. So You'll be interviewing someone if you're using this program, and one of their favorite foods is French fries, which who doesn't love French fries? All the types like that. But you have to dig a little deeper and figure out, is it the potato they like, or is it the fried part? Is it because it's fried? So French fries to me are almost more of an estro thing because it's a fried option. They love Italian, Oriental, Mexican cuisines. They are referred to as the gonadal group because the fatty and rich foods stimulate the gonadal system, which is this, your sexual organs. And this creates a feeling of control and high energy for them. But as with other imbalances, the feeling is really short-lived. Their enzyme deficiency is going to be lipolytic enzymes, lipases. This is the group we'll talk about. They're usually going to have the gallbladder issues. So the lipase is important for proper digestion of fats and triglycerides. So if you're dealing with a type 2 body type, you're going to want to select a digestive enzyme with a good amount of lipolytic support. Now, transformation enzymes do use a blend of lipases that work all through the digestive system, which is good because our fats are not typically digested until the end of digestion. And that gives you a better breakdown in the stomach and makes for better digestion in the small intestine, eliminating any rancidity that could take place. Health concerns for a type 2, this body type has trouble digesting fats, as I mentioned. Fat that is not digested properly does turn rancid. Keep that in mind. You'll see many issues with these people. An estro, they're going to have more menstrual issues for women, prostate disorders for men, just overall hormonal problems. Women may have had a hysterectomy at an early age. They have bloating, water retention, early constipation. They often go from constipation to diarrhea, and that's because the gallbladder is relying on a bile dump. The body's relying on a bile dump. And that's why they're usually their gallbladders are gone or they have gallstones. They suffer from indigestion. It usually happens like where their ribs come together is where they'll feel it. They have a tendency to have skin disorders. Their skin disorder, whereas Paras is more eczema, estro-testros is going to be psoriasis. Going to see gallbladder issues in these people again because the high-fat diet, most of them have had their gallbladder removed. I want to note something about the lipases used in TEC formulas and just really lipase in general if it's a mycelial form. One of the unique things about it is that they are plant-based and the lipases don't require bile to work. So whether they have a gallbladder or not, the liver is what makes the bile, but they don't require bile to break down the fat. You still get that emulsification. So we don't use ox bile for that reason. And we have a whole paper on why. Not to say that it doesn't have a place for some, but I have yet to have to bring ox bile in anyone that doesn't have a gallbladder. Also, they have high cholesterol and triglycerides, usually because they aren't breaking down fat properly. They tend to be bothered more by kidney and bladder infections. And luckily, though, once you clean up their gut and digestion, a lot of those issues resolve. Now, the body shape. This is the teller at the bank. This is the one that gains weight below the waist and the hips and thighs. The width of the clavicle is much more narrow than the width of the hip bone. So they are the triangle shape. The men's shoulders will typically kind of slope down versus being real square, which is what a supra is. Remember that the para has the high perky butt, whereas the estro has a low slung wide butt, almost like a sag. But the more out of balance they are and the more overweight they get, their butt can look like it's more perky, but you just really want to look at, you can see in the lady, in the men here, how it's kind of going into her thigh. That's something you'll look for, whereas the pair will have more of like a round thing going on there. It gets more difficult the more overweight a person is, but that's why I like to use the hip points. That's why I use bone measurement the most, because you can't always depend on how the bottom looks, because if they're really overweight, an estro could look like they have a perky butt because there's so much adipose tissue there. But anyway, you'll have a pretty good idea. But when you combine the questionnaire with the physical aspects, it gets much easier to figure out. This type 2, another thing to note, their legs are generally very strong in comparison to their upper body. So paras have a harder time building muscle all over. Estro-testros have a hard time building upper body strength, but they're very strong in their legs. And in our training, we actually even go into what type of exercise and movement is best for the body types. I'm not getting into it today, but we've even gone as far as to study the different exercise habits of these body types and which exercises are best for the body type. Now the type 2 has specific personality traits as well. So when feeling well, the type 2 is very self-assured, very full of enthusiasm and creativity. They're naturally a manager. They're very sensitive. Most practitioners, so most of you listening, you're most likely an estro or testro, because they just want to help. They want to help everyone. They're very nurturing. They're very caring. They have great imaginations. They like to strive to make the world a better place. They tend to eat based on emotion, and they're not big on breakfast. So because of the liver, gallbladder, and it's really more of their liver that is struggling. They're usually not hungry in the mornings. So that's, again, a question you want to address. And it's on the questionnaire is, are you hungry when you wake up? Usually the estro, testro, or the super body type are not going to be hungry for several hours until after waking. So the diet protocol, recommendations for balance in an estro, you obviously, for anybody, want to avoid unhealthy fats, even with the help of enzymes. Okay. They do not need to avoid fats altogether. They just need healthy fats, and they need a little bit less than the other types. They also need help digesting. So this is the group, if you haven't figured it out, that you would not do keto with. We've actually done case studies in the clinic where we've put estros on keto, and they do okay at first, and then they just feel terrible. And they don't really lose any weight. They actually have more muscle and joint pain, etc. So always something to keep in mind. You do want them, though, to have lots of healthy fat, like olive oil, avocado, macadamia nut, fatty fish. Typically won't be hungry in the mornings, like I said, because of their gallbladder and liver flaring up, but it should improve once they become more balanced. Things to remember, always make sure you're selecting an enzyme high in lipase. Lower fat diets work best for this group. Even Mediterranean would be good. I think paleo usually does okay. You can make some modifications. At the end, I'll show you, we actually have plate methods created for the body types. Fats and spices can overstimulate the gallbladder, so always be mindful of that. Like I said, in the book and in our training, we have a whole lecture on what foods for each type, as far as it, like getting really, really specific on what foods they do best with. May feel healthier if lunch is the largest meal of the day and having a smaller breakfast and lighter dinner. As far as supplements, again, you're going to see these repeatedly. We're going to always recommend, because of that ripple effect I showed you at the beginning, we want to hit digestive support, proteolytic support for detox and inflammation, probiotic for the immune system, more digestive support, good microflora. But the digest formula here specifically is the one you're going to want to go with for an estro, because it has the highest lipase of really any enzyme I've seen on the market and of any enzyme transformation carries. So support products. So here's the script pad you would get if you actually went through with the program, and you could just check off what you were going to put them on. So for estro testros, we usually will use Masterzyme. This is an endocrine supporting product. If the person has come to you with, yes, we're going to put them on the digestive protease probiotic for balance, but they're also dealing with a lot of triglyceride and cholesterol imbalances, lipo is a great product to bring in. Remember, this group is prone to cholesterol problems. So lipo is a great support product we have for cholesterol balance. If they're dealing with a lot of reflux, gastro or gastrozyme is really good, or you're suspicious of intestinal permeability, gastrozyme are great products for healing the mucosal lining, and they help to really ease that. Remember, I talked about that discomfort they feel right here below the rib cage. They're going to knock that out. And then I had mentioned that usually their gallbladder, or their lack of hunger is due to basically sludge in the liver. So the liver support's a great product to bring in. And I just wanted to show all these, because a lot of people just think transformation is just enzymes. And we're so much more than that. We have support products that are super unique and formulated with enzymes to ensure proper really just optimal bioavailability of the herbs and nutrients in our products. And they're not mega dose either. So they're very safe for most people to take through all facets of life. So those are just some of the different support you would use there, but you're going to always want to start here. And then, again, usually it's going to be either lipo or master for an estro or testro. So do you know an estro or testro? Let's move on now to our third body type is the type 3, the supra. Remember, this stands for supraadrenal. When you ask them, a meal is not complete without, they're going to say some form of protein. So they tend to answer, they fit the meat, they fit the meat and potato group. So a lot of men are supras, but there are a lot of women too. Remember I mentioned Tina Turner. She is 100% a supra. They may sit down and before they even taste their food, they salt it because they need that adrenal stimulation. If they are eating chips, they are doing it for the salt, whereas the para is doing it for the potato. So again, this comes really just from experience and being able to figure out these little tweaks in people. And I trained under Dr. Fuller, so that was super helpful. But having the salt there, why do you want the chip? So you have to dig a little deeper because you could be like, well, everybody likes chips, but what is the reason they want the chip? Kind of like pizza. Why do you want the pizza? A para wants the pizza for the crust. The estro wants the pizza for the cheese and the sauce. The supra is going to get a meat lover. They're going to have some type of meat on there, and they're going to want it they like the cheese and stuff too because it's salty, it's rich, but they're going to get the meat and stuff. So things like that. If they're eating olives, it's for the salt, whereas the estro is eating the olive for the fat. Things of that nature. So food preferences, again, protein. So they prefer protein to any other food. However, their consumption of excess protein actually creates more problems with their kidneys and liver. They love seafood. It's two of their favorite things, salty and protein, beef, chicken, barbecue. They are meat eaters. They really gravitate to steak, potato type meals. Salty. They like cured meats, salty. So like lunch meat, sausage. They really love to snack on nuts, cheese, hard-boiled eggs. They can comply really well with a low-carb diet, but it's not the best choice for their biochemical type. They actually make the best vegetarians because they don't require a lot of protein to sustain muscle mass. This group has the easiest time building muscle. It's crazy. They can work out for like a week and you'll see changes in their physique. Whereas a para can kill themselves and not see much change. The enzyme deficiency for a supra is proteolytic enzymes. So the proteases are what we focus on for the breakdown of proteins for a supra. This body type actually makes the best vegetarian, like I said, and they can get by with the least amount of protein and still sustain really good muscle mass. Health concerns for a supra will often result from their inability to detoxify undigested, putrefied protein properly. A lot of times they'll get like left shoulder pain, and that's really that uric acid buildup in their joints from not digesting that protein. The proteases will help with health concerns by cleaning up excess fibrin from the protein that they're eating and help clear out the circulatory system for better blood flow and detox. Every body type can be affected by stress on the adrenals, but it is most prominent in this group. They tend to feel stress rather than fatigue. They tend to hold excess fluid because they are holding excess protein. They have a lot of reflux, a lot of gas, a lot of belching, to the point that they think it's normal. They are the people that never go anywhere without tongues. They think everyone burps and has gas, and that's just the way it is. The undigested protein, though, are consumed by bad bacteria in the system, which is forming those gases, like I mentioned when I talked about the ripple effect. And it's just creating a lot of ammonia gas, which is going to make them even more toxic. Constipation is a problem for this group. They do really well with our 42.5, just a side note. That's the best probiotic for them. The liver will now be bombarded with toxins because of this inability to break down protein, which affects their kidneys. They tend to have really stiff joints and back problems, most likely because of how they are built, but often they will complain of pain in their left shoulder, like I said. Their body shape. So you'll know this body shape. So they're super. They're built like Superman. They have the upside down triangle. They gain weight in the upper back and torso. Their lower half usually will always stay lean. They have broad, strong shoulders. So men, I love, like, once you learn body typing, you'll just go somewhere and look at people. But I love to look at people and I'll look at how their shoulders are. And when I see a good supra, it's like the best. It's just weird. I get like so excited because they have these really sharp, like almost like a square shoulder. I'm like, you're a supra. You can tell just by that. But they have really broad, strong shoulders. Their clavicle is much wider than their hips. So when you learn the measurements, you can verify it by that. They tend to have flat to almost no butt. And they usually, this is the old man with suspenders. They have to use a belt or suspenders to keep their pants up. Like I said, overall, they build muscle really easily. They have a greater muscle mass than the other body types. One thing specific to look at when you're looking at someone, if you can see them in person, is you want to look at their legs. They're going to have really nice toned legs, lean legs at any age. No matter how old they get, their legs just stay really nice and lean. Their personality, they tend to be the most stubborn, hard-headed. They have immense power and drive. They enjoy being in control. They like to be the leader. They usually are naturally a leader. They become leader in whatever they're doing. They really push themselves. They're typically the drivers of conversation and like to have control. They're not hungry in the mornings either. This is the group, and that's because of poor liver detoxification. This is the group that can go all day without eating. They usually will drink coffee all day long or fluids. They'll skip breakfast, they'll skip lunch, and just have one really big dinner. And most men that I work with, that's what they do, unless it's like a para or something. But that's a key thing to look for. So the diet protocol, the super diet and enzyme protocol should be no surprise that you have to limit high protein foods. So when you see their plate method, you'll notice that the amount of protein they're allotted is much less. They still need protein, but not the 16-ounce steak they want to order at Roadhouse. You want them, they need to be eating more of like a 4 to 6 ounce portion. Eat veggies raw when possible and avoid soy, things like that. Those are all things we go over more in the training. So things to remember: this type should not eat without digestive enzyme supplementation due to cholesterol imbalances and overall difficulty digesting protein. Light breakfast because they digest proteins easier in the evenings, and a semi-veggie diet is ideal for them. And again, supplement protocol, because of time, I'm just going to go through really quickly. The number one product we will put a super on is adrenal complex for the adrenals. If you want additional stress support, Resin is really good. If cortisol is the issue, if it's more anxiety, Enzyme's great. But again, starting here and then some additional things. This is good for reflux, K-drain for the kidneys. And then here is the script pad you could use, and just based on what they present with, you could select from there. Last group is your type 4 or your neuro. This body type can be really complex or really simple. Simple because they don't eat much, because everything makes them sick, or it's hard because so many digestive challenges they have. It presents them with a lot of health issues, and they seem just really blended. This group gets its name from the neurological and endocrine systems. For them, a meal isn't complete without some form of cereal or dairy. Many type 4s will drink milk until they are told they are allergic to it. So you shouldn't be surprised when you find out the enzyme that they lack is lactase. So again, their food preferences are milk and dairy, grains and cereals, but their enzyme deficiency is lactase and lipase. Lactase for milk sugar, lipase for fats, and they really like milk products, but they're terrible for them. Neuro body types often suffer from extreme food allergies. This is your sensitive people. They suffer from ongoing fatigue. They typically they'll go to several different doctors trying to figure out why they're sick, or why they're exhausted all the time, but they never get the right answer. They have multiple digestive issues and get sick often and have very weakened immune systems. Some of this has to do with the fact that most type 4s, believe it or not, and this was observed, it's not like scientifically proven, but it's been observed that most type 4s were actually not breastfed and given formula instead. There seems to be a correlation there. The body shape of a neuro is similar to the para in that they gain weight evenly all over, just like a para. And they're also very square, but they're more, a para is square, like in the fact that their clavicle and hip bones are the same distance apart. A neuro's clavicle and hip bones are also the same distance apart. This is where the training comes in. One of the things you do is you have to, this is where the bottom comes in. A neuro is going to have a flat buttock, and they're going to have almost like a little boy shape. They don't have any indent in their hip area, like there's no curvature. They're just kind of straight up and down. They're going to be either straight up and down, or they're going to be more soft and plump. So an example of a soft and plump neuro is Jack Black. If you're familiar with that celebrity, Jack Black is a neuro. They are either straight up and down, like I said, or that. Many have the same body type as when they were teens. Their shape may be described as boyish, wiry, or having a lot of baby fat, and they're generally very immature looking in the face. They tend to mature much slower than other types, and that keeps them from being developed enough to be really successful in sports. And because they usually will reach puberty later in life. While their ability to gain weight evenly in bone structure are similar to the para, like I said, one distinct difference is that the neuro does not have a perky butt. Their waist is not well defined, and their heads sometimes might seem like it's a little too large for their body. There's really no nice way to say that, but that's how they look. But they're also very intellectual. They're very smart. And it's probably because they have bigger brains, and that's why their heads seem larger. The personality traits and habits of a neuro are they tend to be more introverted than the other body types. They are reflective and logical thinkers. They do not make their minds up quickly. They have to take all the information in. They're very analytical before they can make a decision. Most neuros have been classified as nerds in school because of the quality of their intelligence. Nutrition for balance, again, avoid dairy and high fat foods, healthy fat in moderation, include complete protein at each meal. This is super important for a para, and making sure they're getting the other whole foods. Again, in the book and in the training, we go into more detail on which foods. Things to remember: protein, casein, or protein, which is casein, the protein in milk, and sugar, lactose from dairy sources are the biggest problem for this group. A good alternative for this group is fish, poultry, eggs for their protein. It's very critical that they obtain amino acids in the form of food and use spices cautiously for them. So you'll notice that their supplements look a little different. Enzyme therapy is individualized just like nutrition is. And when it comes to enzymes, we carry multiple formulas because everyone's different. Neuros happen to be a group of people that are known as the sensitive ones. So you'll notice that their digestive is called Digestzyme, Purezyme for their protease, and Planodophilus for their probiotic. This is the gentle line of a digestive, a proteolytic, and a probiotic product. This is a much simpler, it's doing the same job. It's just tolerated very well for the sensitive individual, people that are very inflamed. They come to you, they're very toxic already. You're going to want to start here, because if you put them on an enzyme with too much power, you're going to have too much of a herx, and they're not going to want to take the products anymore. So you want to start slower with a more gentle formula and ease them into it as you're cleaning things up. Support products for a neuro: Supercell. This is a whole food multivitamin. Because of their finickiness with food, they're very picky. A lot of times they're not getting a well-rounded diet. So we do recommend like a whole food vitamin supplement for them. The Gastrozyme, most of them they have intestinal permeability. So that's where Gastrozyme comes in. And, if they're really anxious, you can use Calmzyme, Masterzyme for just overall endocrine support, because remember, their endocrine system as a whole is challenged. And Masterzyme is a glandular product that supports the adrenal system, the thyroid, the parathyroid, the gonadal system. It supports the entire endocrine system. So it's a super underrated product. I love that product. It's great. So that's that one there. So do you know a neuro? So as we're wrapping up, that concludes the types. I wanted to show you guys, because the purpose of this was to share our individualism program. We, like I said, we've been doing this a long time. It's a patented program to TEC. We have booklets for the body types. So if you were to use this in practice, when you go through the training, you actually receive soft copies of these booklets, where you can print them out, but they look like this, and it goes through their foods that they're allowed that are best for their body type, their plate method, their enzyme protocol, the right exercises for them. It's all in the booklet. It gives a whole explanation of what the body type is, how it came to be, all that stuff. So great information in those booklets that is provided. These are the plate methods for each of the types. So you can see that the type 1, notice, remember, they need more protein. So they're getting 4 to 6 ounces. They require a lot less carbohydrate. So you might be thinking, well, that's not very much carb, but they're getting carb here too with the veggies, and then making sure they have healthy fat. You could get a little more flexible here. Honestly, I've put pears on half a cup of carb and they do fine. It just depends on the person. Type 2, same thing. Type 2s, they don't need as much protein. They have a little less fat, lots of non-starchy veggie. And then you'll see that the Supra, for example, their protein is lower. They do better on high carb diets. Okay. Because I've done macros before with not health coaches, with personal trainers. Most personal trainers are Supras. They do really well on these macro splits that are very low fat and high carb. So last summer I did this and it did not go so well for me, but I'm a para. And my blood sugar, my numbers went crazy. My A1C went up to 5.7. My insulin was high when I was doing this high carb diet. It was all healthy. It was high carb. And it's because I'm a para. I knew it was wrong, but I was just trying to test my theory, how it's the argument that macros are for everybody. No, they're not. Not that split anyway. So you'll see here those Supras do really well. This is why I think most bodybuilders are Supras, because they can do that high carb diet. Now the protein, they do a lot of protein, but you'll notice a lot of bodybuilders, they're having excessive gas, lots of body aches. So we work with a lot of bodybuilders as well. And when we give them protease, it makes a world of difference in their training and just their overall physique, because it also helps to pull fluid off. So in a nutshell, enzyme therapy plays a huge role in addressing the ripple effect that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And you can see how the body types are next to the systems they have the greatest struggle with. So, back to this ripple effect, your estrotestro, remember theirs is lipase, their endocrine system, as far as their reproductive, is going to suffer the most. Whereas your paras, they have a lot of respiratory and skin issues. Neuros are going to be more nervous system deficiency here. So usually that's what kind of symptoms they're going to show with. And the Supra, cardiovascular, is going to be a big thing for them. Some endocrine issues, but a lot of cardiovascular. And that is, in a nutshell, you want to make sure no matter the body type, we're promoting lean protein, healthy fat, whole grains, veggies, fruits, water, all the things you guys are already doing, I'm sure. And if you would like to learn more on how you can become trained in biochemical individualism, visit tecseminars.com and you can get access to our training and additional educational opportunities that we provide, some free, some for purchase. You can also purchase the program online under the training link and save $100 using code 2022 March at checkout. And here is the coupon code for all of you listening today. Whether you want to use body typing or not, if you're familiar with transformation, if you want to learn more about enzymes, we are offering a coupon code for all of NANP using code NANP 2022 to get 55% off plus free shipping on your first order. And you can order at transformationenzymes.com. And that is it. I am ready for questions. Thank you guys for listening.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I know who I am. I could recognize several family members and clients. And it's just that extra tool in the toolbox to be able to hone in and add that extra piece. I think like most of us, we trial things. The keto did not work for me at all.
Right.
But when we got to talk about these things, right? My journey started out with severe hyperglycemia, really bad.
Really?
That started me in the journey into practice. So could definitely see, just that tweak on the enzymes, because of course, we talk about enzymes, but it's getting that right combination. So this is really great. No doubt that listeners are going to have questions and want to know more. And so thank you, Amy. This really was fantastic. So I am going to wrap this up for today. And I just want to remind everybody that this presentation, it can be viewed in the NANP members area, along with a vast selection of cutting edge webinars. And as mentioned, each webinar includes a corresponding quiz, which is worth 1 continuing education credit. So if you have an interesting topic that you would like to present, or if you know any speakers that you would like us to host, feel free to reach out to me, Andrea at namp.org. So this brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Amy. That was wonderful. Bye for now.
Thank you.